Good everyone. I hope you're having an amazing day. So today I'm going to talk about another integration design pattern that is the batch data synchronization. So if you look at the spelling of synchronization, right, Americans use with the Z or whatever they call Z. We use it with S in New Zealand. So yeah, so don't get confused with that. It means pretty much the same. Okay, so just wanted to let you guys know this is not a hands-on session. This is an architecture discussion session because if you wanted to know that one of the most important aspect of any project or software development, or for that matter, any other development of a building or any other stuff, right? Architecture plays a very important role. So you have to decide the right technology to use for a certain problem, right? So that's why I wanted to talk about different patterns so that you can use based on your requirement, right? So why do we need a batch data synchronization, right? So let me give you a scenario, right? So you have a Salesforce, which is the system used by, say, a fictitious company, Wilson Brewery, and the Salesforce integrates with a third-party system, say SAP, PeopleSoft, or whatever, right? A third party system. Just let's not name it, but just to give you a context, right? So now you have a requirement that you extract a large number of data from a Salesforce and push it to the third party system, or you have a requirement where you're syncing a lot of data from a third party system to Salesforce. Let me draw this here using a sticky note, just makes it easier. Salesforce here, that's one here. And we call, let's say, order management, or let's not call it as an order management system. Let's say a financial system, right? System, okay, uh, which deals with whatever, right? Financial information like credit notes, sales invoice, whatnot. Okay, let's not get into nitty gritty stuff of that, but just for your own understanding, a black box financial system. Okay, and this is the Salesforce. Okay, now you could have two requirements, right? Where the Salesforce acts as a data master. What I mean by data master is where Salesforce is initiating a push to the external system, or the financial system, right, is a data master where you are having it where the data gets changed in financial system, and Salesforce want to pull that, okay, and massive amount of data, and they wanted to do every day. For instance, financial system maintains invoices, right? Every single day, the invoices get created. So let me draw here. So let's say invoices. So invoices get created every single day, and this inside this financial system, and Salesforce wants to pull that on nightly basis, right? So it's a batch process, asynchronous or batch data, so it's a batch process, right? So you can use that. So so you can do that here, right? So you can use this um, design pattern to pull the data from financial system to Salesforce. Okay. Now you have to ask various questions before you even jump into this design pattern. The first question you have to ask that whether the data will be stored in the Salesforce, right? If the answer to that question is no, then there are other integration option, right? Which an architect should consider, like a mashup. It's just an example. Or let's say the data will be stored in Salesforce. So should the data be refreshed in response to an event in the remote system, where in this case the financial system, right? Should the data be refreshed on a scheduled basis, whether the data will be refreshed in a certain intervals? Does the data support primary business process? This is very important. So your data, right? Whatever data you're dealing with, is it a part of your main business process? If it is, yeah, then you have to look into this. Okay, and are there any kind of reporting requirement, right? That's impacted by the availability of this data in the Salesforce. For instance, the invoice information. Are you going to use this as a part of your, reporting analytics, right? So would you be using this invoice information in the reporting analytics, right? So now let's say you're gonna go for this the batch data system, right? So I'll repeat it again. So when we'll be using this batch data synchronization when you are importing to Salesforce from an external system, and when you are exporting the data out of the system Salesforce and importing into an external system. So you will be a chunk of data, a massive amount of data. So you'll be using the batch data. So the name itself indicates the batch data, right? Okay, so that sounds pretty cool. Now, what are the technology we will be using, right? What kind of, because Salesforce offer a lot of things out of box. You can use, batch APIs. So you can use say remote process invocation. You can use remote call in. There are different things you can use, but we have to look at the solution which is the best fit. So in this case, let's take an example. Let's go here. Okay, so let's say we have Salesforce, right, and which is the data master, right? So, and I explained to you what data master means. So let me write it as financial system. So like I said, I'm not going to do hands-on. This is just an architecture discussion, and you should know, different patterns out there in Salesforce, which will help you make an informed decision going forward. If you're ever going to do, integrate between, Salesforce and other external systems. Okay, now Salesforce is a data master here. So what that means is that, any change in the data which is happening in Salesforce should initiate a data push to an external system. Okay, so that means creation of new record in Salesforce, updating to an existing record, deletion of a record, and undeletion of a record, right? So that's what I meant by the data, Salesforce acting as data master. So that information should be reflected in this financial system, okay? So it could be an account, could be a contact, it could be, tax information, GST information. In the UK, they have VAT, value-added tax. In New Zealand, we have GST. Australia has GST. Other countries, I don't know, whatever. You know. So some countries do not have tax, maybe somewhere in the Middle East. But just you get the point, right? What I'm trying to say. So information, accounting information, chart of accounts, for instance, you wanted to, push that to the financial system, right? So okay, so what is the best pattern we're going to use in this case, right? So in this case, we're going to use Salesforce change data capture. Okay, so I'm going to put it here, Salesforce change data capture. So you can go to setup and look for change data capture, and you can actually add which objects you want it to be part of it, right? So in a trial version, I think in the developer version you get 5 objects, and you can extend it contacting Salesforce. So I'm not going to get into the details of that. We can get into that when I'm going to do hands-on later once I finish this integration pattern, right? So just to give you a context. Okay, so sales data capture. Okay, so what we do here, we're gonna do this. So I will do like last time. I'm gonna do best fit. Yeah, so I'm gonna do here. It's a best fit. Okay, and then I'm gonna do something called good. Okay, and then I'm gonna do something called suboptimal. Okay, which just means not really ideal solution, but people do tend to use that, which is not really great. So that's why it's important that you list down different options here. Yeah. Okay. So the change data capture, I'll explain you in just a second. Just let me put that as the best. Okay. So why it is the best? Okay. So Salesforce change data capture, right? It publishes the change events. Okay. Which represents the change to the Salesforce record. Like I was talking about, creation of new record, updates to an existing record, deletion of a record, and deletion of a record, right? So with change data capture, right, you can receive near real-time changes of the Salesforce record, okay, and synchronize corresponding records in an external data, right, external system, which is here, okay. So change data capture, right, it takes care of continuous synchronization part of replication, okay. So it publishes the Salesforce data for for the change a new record. So data which get changed, data which is new. So like I said, update or new records. Okay, so it publishes that information. So yeah, so that is the best fit in this case. Okay, now what happens, right? When Salesforce is not a remote system. Okay, so when financial system is a remote system. Okay, so in that case, what's the best option you can use, right? Means you wanted to push the data, or Salesforce pulling it, whichever way you put it across. You wanted to get the information in simple terms from financial system to Salesforce, right? Like for instance, I talked about sales invoice, credit notes. That needs to be pushed. Okay, so what's the best design pattern? What's the technology we're going to use here? So we're going to use something called replication via third-party ETL tools, right? So ETL tools. So we're going to use replication via third-party. I'll explain to you. There are a lot of ETL tools, right, out there. So I'll explain to you a bit later what all the tools you can look at. Dataloader.io is one of the ETL tools, right, which is pretty popular, and it's not free, right? So you can, it's a data loader. If so Salesforce have got something called data import and data export, right? Out of box functionality, but data loader is something which you have to pay for it. It's a Salesforce tool, right? So you can do a lot of cool stuff with it. Yeah. So, this is so replication via third-party ETL tools, right? So you can always leverage the third-party tools, right, which allow you to uh, run change data capture against the source data. Okay, so source data in this case is the financial system. So you can pretty much hook up an ETL in between the Salesforce and financial system, so which can look for a change data capture happening in the financial system. And so let's say, okay, so you can have an ETL system, right? So this one, let's say, let me put this as the best. Yeah. So this is we're going to use when financial force is the data master. Means to say you wanted to push the data from the financial system to the Salesforce. Okay. So in that case, we use this replication via third-party ETL. Okay. So what happens is that you paste an ETL in between Salesforce and financial system, and ETL tools, right? It pretty much runs the change data capture against the source data, which is this one. Yeah, financial system. And then this tool, right, it reacts to changes um, in this financial system, and it transforms the data and then calls the Salesforce bulk API to push the data to the Salesforce. Okay, so that's why extraction, transformation, and load, right? So what happens is that you have a change in financial system. Let's say a sales invoice got created or credit notes got created. So ETL will determine that change, and it will transform the data in such a form so that the Salesforce bulk API can make use of it, and you can create a record in Salesforce. Okay, that sounds simple, I hope. So I repeat it again. So Salesforce, right? So in this case, Salesforce is not the source of truth. Sorry, it's not the data master. Means we are not interested in the change that's happening in Salesforce. We are interested in the change that's happening in the financial force, right? Financial system. By the way, Financial Force is just another. It's an ERP system, right? I worked on Financial Force, so it's pretty cool, right? I worked on the professional service automation, so it's pretty amazing system, though, right? If you're interested, check it out. You can Google it and you can check it out about Financial Force. Okay, sorry, I digress. Okay, so financial system, right? So financial system. Say you have an ETL in between, right? So an activity got triggered. So ETL, somehow picked that information and it transferred the data and pushed it to Salesforce using bulk API. Okay, sounds pretty straightforward, right? Now, Salesforce act as a data master, right? Let's go back to the first requirement again, where the Salesforce acts as a you know um, data master means to say that Salesforce making a change and that information has to be transferred to the financial system. Okay, so it is this directional now. Okay, Salesforce making a change, and the financial system should receive a change, like tax information, account information, contact information, right? Because Salesforce is the source of truth for that. Yeah, and financial system just use it as a reference point for whatever they wanted to do. Okay, so what's the other stuff we can use? So what I'll do, I will create just get a bit messy here, eh? So I'm just going to do replication via third party. Oh, come on. It's like I'm shouting at the integration. Sorry about that. So, so this is when your Salesforce act as a data master. So we're gonna use. So remember we talked about replication via third-party ETL when financial system is acting as a data source. Now in this case, what about if you are trying to use an ETL for Salesforce? Okay, so let me delete this one. We don't need this. So let's say we have used this one for financial system. What happens if you want to use the similar functionality for each Salesforce? Let's say repeat, right? So it's so in this case, the Salesforce is a data source, right? And you can use the time status information to query the data and filter the result set, right? So what happens is, right? So you have the ETL determines the change that happens in Salesforce, and it pushes the data to financial system. Okay, a pretty simple explanation. So Salesforce, makes account change, contact change. ETL picks up the change, and it converts to the form which financial system understands. Maybe financial system might have an API, so it calls that API and pushes the stuff to financial system. Okay, so is that a good solution? I mean, it is a good solution, absolutely. But is that a best solution? Not really. It's not a best solution. For Salesforce, using an ETL is not a great solution. It is a good solution. But if you are looking at a best solution, then you have to use the Salesforce change data capture. Anything that's going on Salesforce side, and you want that data to be pushed out to a third party system, you got to use the Salesforce change data capture. But if you're planning to use ETL tool, right, extraction, transformation, load tool, for whatever reason, right? So, I mean, you can use it. It's a good fit, but it's not a best fit. Okay. Now we got another one which I will tell you about. The worst fit, suboptimal fit, okay? Because it's very important to understand the bad stuff out there, right? Not the bad stuff, I would say not very great stuff, okay? Not a great solution to be used for this scenario, if I put that way, okay? So remote call-in, okay? So this is a one thing, remote call-in. So this is another technology which you can use. So this is used, okay, when remote financial system, right, is the data master. Means we are interested to push the data from the financial system to the Salesforce. Okay, like I said, sales invoice, credit notes get created in financial system. We want to push that data to the Salesforce. Okay, so we have decided to use the remote calling. Okay, now it is possible, right, for a remote system to call into Salesforce by using API, right? Let's say financial Salesforce has its own API, right? Let's say you created a custom object here called credit notes. You created a custom object here called sales invoice. Okay, financial system consuming the Salesforce API, right? There's no ETL layer between. Okay, just financial. Okay, let's go back to the new thing. Okay, let's make it more cleaner, right? I just don't. It just look a bit messy there. Sorry about that. Sometimes that's why I prefer old-fashioned, the board, with the marker, and so you can explain in a nice way. But yeah, we are in a unprecedented times, so working from home becomes very norm. So it's we can't always use the board. So Jamboard is pretty cool. Yeah. Okay. Financial system. Right. So what happens? So we're gonna explain the suboptimal system here. Right. So Salesforce exposes an API, say, and Financial Force consumes it, and then push the data back to the Salesforce. Okay. So now this can cause issues on ongoing traffic between the two systems, right? So there could be a traffic issue between a massive load of data you're pushing back, right? So this pattern has a potential for causing continual updates, which has a potential to impact performance for end users. Okay, so it can have a so this specific technology, what we're talking about, remote calling, it can cause a performance issue on the Salesforce side because you keep on pushing this stuff, it will have an impact on the traffic, and then thereby impacting the performance issue on the user side. Okay, so I will put it as remote. Okay, so I'll put it as remote. What's that called? Call in. All right. So this is a remote call in. Okay. So this belongs to this boy here. Yeah. Now, what happens when the Salesforce is the data master, right? As I talked about before, you insert an account here in Salesforce, or a contact change, or an update, or delete, or undelete. So how about we use something called remote process invocation? Okay, so let me remote process invocation, right? On the Salesforce side. So what happens is that Salesforce can call remote system and performs updates to data as they occur. So what I mean by that is that Salesforce can consume a financial system API, right, and push the data using the API. Okay. Now this can cause considerable ongoing traffic between the two systems. Okay. And now, like I said, right, you have to pay attention to the potential updates because it might cause a user user performance issues on the end system, right? So imagine you keep on pushing the data, and the users log on who wanted to use the financial system, right? They see sluggish behavior, the data is not getting reflected properly, whatnot, right? So this kind of approach may not be the best one, right? For this kind of scenario, if you wanted to push the bulk amount of data, like say you wanted to schedule a 6 o'clock, you keep on pushing, right? So it's not a optimum solution, right? And what about the error handlings, right? That's one of the things you have to keep it in consideration. What happens if the data fails in the transit, right? How are you going to recover it? Okay, well, you're going to send it back. Okay, so the error handling plays a very important role, so which we're going to talk about just right now, right? So this is my favorite topic because in integration, error handling is the most important thing. Okay, so this is like the boss of the integration, I would say. If you're an architect, if you're a developer, if you're not taking error handling into consideration, you're doing a big injustice to integration, right? You're gonna mess up the integration. What happens if things goes wrong, right? You have to User won't have any idea what's going on. Yeah, you can do a lot of stuff to work on it. So error handling is one of it. Okay, so for error handling, okay, so how do you go handle the error? Okay, so let's say Salesforce. Okay, and this is financial system. Uh, so, okay, sounds good. Okay, right. Um, so now, let's talk about the first case. What I've talked about, the change data capture, right? When Salesforce is a data master and we're using the best fit, right? Which is the change data capture, like whatever happens, it pushes the data. Okay. So in case of error handling, right? So error handling must be performed in a remote system. Okay, remote server, because the event, what happens is that you're actually handling Salesforce pretty much handles the events to the remote system for further processing. Okay, so it's a responsibility of the remote server to take care of the error handling, and this pattern is pretty much asynchronous. Okay, so the remote system, right, which handles this financial system, right, which handles message queuing, processing, you know so it becomes a responsibility of the financial system to take care of the error handling as well. Okay. So one of the most important thing you have to understand, change data capture, right, events, right? Whenever a change data happens, change data events get fired. They are they will never be processed within a database transaction. Okay, so what happens as a matter of fact? Publish events can't be rolled back within a transaction. Okay, so keep that into consideration. So events are they can't be processed within a database transaction. Okay, so now, if you talk about the recovery, right, because this pattern, what we talked about, right, change data capture is so asynchronous, the remote system must initiate retries based on the agreement that have between the Salesforce and the financial system. Okay, so you can use the replay ID, to replay, the changes associated with the change data capture event and retrieve the information. So that's one of the things you have to keep into consideration. Error handling is very important. Now, we talked about another one where Salesforce use where we are using an external third-party system. So what I mean by that is that we use an ETL, right? An ETL tool in between to read the data from a Salesforce, right? So where we said that ETL determines there's a change happening, and it calls the financial system API to push the data. Okay. So in this case, what happens if an error occurs, right? Let's say ETL encounters an error during the read operation from Salesforce. You got to implement a retry for errors which are not infrastructure related. Okay. So in case of repeated failures, you got to have a standard processing using control tables. Okay. So ETL should implement the control tables. So what that means is that, say, you should have a control table. So let's say put in place. So you should have a control table in place. So what happens is that when the ETL syncs the data, right, reads the data from Salesforce, it stores the information in the control table. Okay, let's say information A gets stored, information B. This other account A and B get stored. Okay, now for whatever reason, let's say read operation fails. Okay, so next time when it tries to fetch, right, ETL, it shouldn't be. Let's say Salesforce in the meantime it create another account called C. Okay, so we need to sync A, B, and C to the financial system. Okay, so that's the main requirement, right? Now, in the first read, ETL managed to read A and B from the Salesforce, okay, and put into control table. Now, in the second read, and then it failed for whatever reason, the read failed, okay. So in that case, right, what should happen, right? The ETL should only be reading C. It shouldn't be reading A, B, and C. If that happens, what happens? You have A, B, C. That's a data duplication issue, okay. So that's why control tables are very important. So this is something based on the ETL tools you use. Okay, so you got to log the error. So that's one of the. This is one of the approach you can use. I'm just saying. Okay, I'm not saying this is the only approach you can use, but so ETL should be able to log the error. Retry the read operation, truncate if it's unsuccessful, send a notification. Right. Okay. So and recovery option often includes restarting the ETL tools. Okay. Now we got another scenario that is what happens when the financial system is the data master. Okay, so far we talked about how to handle error when Salesforce is a data master, means changes happen in Salesforce, you want to push the financial system. Fantastic. Okay, now we talked about two ways you can do it. Okay, now in this case, what happens when you're writing the data back to the Salesforce? Okay, so error handling. So error that occurs, right, during the write operation, which is you're writing to Salesforce, okay, can result from a combination of factor. Okay, so API can fail for whatever reason. Okay, so what should happen? So you should uh, have a mechanism to send a notification like a success or failure and a collection of errors for each record. So error handling is very important, right? The financial system should know, let's say out of 1,000 records, which one failed, right? So your API should be flexible enough to, return that information back, saying, okay, or should have a mechanism to log the error, right, somewhere. Okay, so you have to, record that information. Okay, so and when it fails, you just restart it. Okay, So that's pretty much the error handling. Error handling, like I said, you got to implement error handling, right? It's very important. Error handling plays a very crucial role. Now, along with the error handling, the security aspect is very important. Okay, so now in terms of this sort of integration, right? You got to use the um, so so let me give you a scenario about this when we talk. Okay, let's move to another page. Okay, let's say security. Okay, so if you're suggesting a technology, right, to a development team or a project team as an architect, you got to keep security into consideration, which is very important because security can muck up the system, right? If you're unsure about the security, you got to research it and find out, right? So in this case, let's say we got a Salesforce here, okay? So we got a Salesforce, and we got okay, and we got a financial system. Okay, so we got a financial system. So we got a Salesforce here. We got a financial system here. Okay. Now, so if the financial system is consuming an API, okay, from the Salesforce, let's say, bulk API, so you got to make sure that you use Lightning Platform License with at least API only user permission, okay, so that it helps to authenticate only allowed user to the Salesforce API. So you shouldn't be giving a sysadmin right to a user who will be using an API. That will be a big mistake. Okay, so you got to use API only permission. So you have to configure that on Salesforce. Okay, now you got to use the standard encryption in place to keep the password access secure, and wherever possible, use HTTPS protocol, not HTTP, HTTPS protocol when making calls to Salesforce API. Okay, you can also use proxy traffic to the Salesforce API through an on-premise security solution. Okay, so if it's necessary, so you have to keep those into consideration. Security is very, very important. Okay, now one thing you have to consider that that when exactly you're going to use this integration. Okay, you can't initiate this integration in the middle of a day when people are using the system. Okay, that will cause massive amount of a glitch to a system, performance issue, user will not like it, data inconsistency. So you have to plan this integration. Okay, so that's something you have to plan with your customer, or if you're doing this kind of integration, and you have to work out the best possible time. Okay, um, so you got to, because users shouldn't be using the source system when you're integrating something. Okay, that will cause a lot of issue. Okay, let's say a user is working on a tax information. Okay, and you decide to append the tax information on an existing source system, right? That will cause a lot of data issues, and it will cause a lot of, it might even fail when you try to integrate. Okay, so you have to plan that thing way advanced, right? A user shouldn't be using a system when you're doing integration. Okay, so yeah, and now you can, like I said, you can always use the middleware. That's the ETL tools you can use. So the things which are highly desirable for middle layer, that's ETL tools. That's event handling, which is important. Protocol conversion, which is important. Translation and transformation, which is critical. Okay. Buffering and queuing, which is important. Asynchronous transport, support for asynchronous transport protocol, which is mandatory, and it should be able to do service orchestration. An ETL tool, as the name suggests, it should do extract, transform, and load. Right? If you're talking about the middle layer, okay. So and it should also support long polling, which is if you are using Salesforce change data capture technology. Okay, and the routing is desirable, but it's not mandatory. Okay, so encryption is desirable. Yeah, and what is not required is synchronous transport protocol support because we are dealing with asynchronous transport protocols. Yeah. Okay, so that's pretty much I wanted to talk about in terms of this design pattern. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something today. See, the one thing I just wanted to tell you that if you are given an opportunity to work on an integration, right, it's good to take a step back and look at the patterns that's out there, right? Please do not reinvent the wheel, okay? Because it might cost your company a lot of money going forward if you use a wrong design pattern, okay? So that's why read about the different stuff out there. Talk to an architect. If you're a developer, you know it's good to talk to an architect. If you do not have an architect, if you do not have a system or enterprise architect in your company, it becomes your responsibility to go and investigate the best possible solution out there. Okay, right? All right. That being said, I hope you have an amazing Saturday. Greetings and adios. Take care. Bye bye.